And while they're coming up, we're going to have a few more examples of persons that function. We need to. Come on and join us up here.
Straight ahead to me, and then let's get you
You know, some of these people are from history, but some are very current to our times now. We never question the music of Beethoven when we hear his Fifth Symphony and the fact that he was deaf.
I will be there to take
All right, we're going to move on with our student panel. And the person that's the facilitator for this panel also was the facilitator for my being able to earn a master's degree from Cal State LA. And when I went to Cal State, I had injured my hip, and I had a hip replacement, and I was hobbling around, and I was delighted that I had handicapped parking, but that was about all the accommodation that I thought I needed until Gonzalo said, I'll go back from that. Gonzalo, our next facilitator, said to me, Mrs. Lindsay, are you registered with the State Department of Rehabilitation? And I said, well, no, because I'm not really disabled. He said, yes, you are. He said, look at you, you are disabled. You have a traditional disability. You have severe arthritis. And that enabled me to get the accommodations I needed on the campus of Cal State LA, going through a BA degree and a master's. So this person that I'm going to introduce now is a very special person in my life because he has enabled me to also be able to navigate through higher ed. Gonzalo Centino works as a disability management specialist at California State University of Los Angeles. He has served in this capacity for the past 22 years. Gonzalo lives and works within the community of people with disabilities. In June of 2010, Gonzalo was the recipient of the Cal State LA Outstanding Staff Award, given annually to members of the university community who have made significant contributions to improve the quality of campus life for students, faculty, staff, and administrators. This award is especially meaningful because it reflects the level of professional respect colleagues have for Gonzalo's work. He holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in French Studies from Cal State LA. And the reason he's the facilitator for this panel is because he is currently working on a Master of Science in Rehabilitation Counseling at Cal State. He also serves as board president of the nonprofit organization Fiesta Escativa. Okay, thank you. And he's going to introduce our panel, and these are all students, and they have much to offer in terms of what our goal, and that's the focus on ability.
And actually, I'm going to come on this side because when I turn on the mic, I think I'm the one that's giving the feedback over here. So yeah. Everybody hear me if I talk a little loud?
Let's work on our accommodation strategies here, right? Let's try this one.
Well, good morning. Hello? Hello?
Okay, it's on.
Hello? Hello?
Hello.
We'll get it.
Okay, can everybody hear me now?
Yay.
Excellent. Okay. I want to make this part of the conference a lot more interactive, and I'm sure the panelists would love your questions that you ask directly, but what I'd like to do, rather than give you a bio on each and every one of our panelists, I think it would be more appropriate if I asked them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about who they are. And I believe, actually, before we get started on that, Ms. Lindsay asked me to talk a little bit about what I do at Council LA. At Council LA, I'm one of 2 disability management specialists. In the department, we have additionally the psychologist who works with students who have learning disabilities and or psychiatric disabilities. And so what we do is we set up reasonable accommodations for students of diverse disabilities. We have approximately about 800 students who are enrolled with the department, of which 600 use the accommodations that we offer at Council LA. We are on a quarter system, so it's a 10-week system, and so it goes by pretty fast. So accommodations for 600 students gets to be a little intense, but a lot of fun at the same time. I have been with the university for a significant amount of years, in the current position for about 23 years, but I've actually been at Council LA since 1985. I did acquire my disability at the age of 13, diving into a shallow in the swimming pool, where I broke my neck at the C5 to 6 level. I always like to share this little story, a little tidbit about me. 2 years prior to my injury, I used to play the violin and piano, and I was also studying music at the Saturday Music Conservatory at Council LA. So I kind of grew up with the university, and it's really, really close to me, and I love it quite a bit. And the students that I work with at the university as well. But I want to give everybody here a chance to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what is it that you're pursuing at the moment, what is your background, and how did you get here? What do you want to do? We'll start with Crystal here.
So I'm sorry, please forgive me, I'll be probably running back and forth if you have any tech issues. So my name is Crystal Miguel, and I am a 3rd-year PhD student here at Claremont Graduate University. So that's who I am. I have an associate's in accounting, computerized accounting, an associate's in letters, arts, and science, a bachelor's in rhetoric, a bachelor's in American studies, a master's in educational administration and leadership, and I'm working on a PhD in higher education. And the incidental fact that I was diagnosed bipolar at 19 is just another piece of information of my life. My identity is not wrapped up in that fact, but it is a part of my identity, and it's an integral part of my identity. Got it. So my focus when I discuss disabilities is really on self-advocacy. It's centered around self-disclosure, because in order to achieve things, we have to sometimes just kind of say, look, this is who I am, this is what I need. So in doing that, however, we face discrimination sometimes. So that's kind of why I'm here today, is to discuss self-advocacy, self-disclosure, and those very well-meaning but discriminatory things that we face every day as we try to navigate things like getting careers, going to the career center, or the impression that somehow we're not together, we don't have our act together because we don't want to come and announce to the world that there is some issue that will make us be perceived as less than capable. All of my little initials behind my name mean nothing to some people once they realize that I'm bipolar. It just, all those credentials just walk away. And that's what I'm here to discuss today.
Okay. My name is Maria Coos. I'm from La Sierra University, and I am in my last quarter of my bachelor's degree in biological science. And I came to La Sierra. I was married. I have a daughter, and I came to La Sierra wanting to be a conservation biologist. And all through school, everybody said, "Oh, she's dumb. She's lazy." You know, no one ever diagnosed me with ADD and dyslexia until I came to La Sierra. And I think it was good for me. I was like, yes, finally something's wrong with me, because now I can work on it. You know, like, I'm not dumb, I'm not, lazy, I can do this, And so when I came to La Sierra and I found that out, it was really liberating for me. And now that I'm pursuing a career in biology, there's a lot of students out in, especially in La Sierra, that are in the science building. And once I tell them that I have these disabilities, they're like, well, you work with one of the top professors and you're out in the jungles in the summer and you're catching lizards and you're describing new species. And I'm like, yeah, you can do this too. So I think I became an advocate, not needing to, but I did because I saw that I have these disabilities. I don't feel like I have them. I feel like I learn differently, but I think it's liberating for other people too, because something might be wrong with them and they just don't want to see it, which is fine, it's okay, but I think for me it was like, I was happy that I knew something was wrong with me, as opposed to growing up all through school and then just saying, oh, just put her in the corner, she's not, she doesn't know, so I really like being able to advocate for people and help people. Now that I'm teaching biology labs, general biology labs, that's one of the things that I actually talk about. Nobody told me to talk about it, but I bring it up and I say, these are hard courses, and if you feel like, why am I not getting it like everybody else? Something might be wrong with you, so go to the disability office, figure it out. It's not bad. I thought it was the greatest thing, because now I'm like, okay, I know I have this. I know something's wrong with me. How am I going to get to where I need to be? I can do it. And I think that I became an advocate, and so I think that's why I'm here.
Good morning. My name is Greg Richardson. I am a PhD student here at Paramount Graduate University. This coming Tuesday, I will be defending my proposal dissertation. And, my journey in education has been a long journey, but a very rewarding one. Years ago, I actually became an engineer, 9 degree. Someone recognized as a drafter that I had ability and gave me an opportunity to do design. I practiced very successfully as an engineer for 20 years. The first 5 before I even started on my degree. I went on to get an MBA. I have a master's in special education. I have a master's in school administration. I realized when I was in my 30s that I was dyslexic. I realized that I was not incapable, just different. And I was blessed to find strategies, accommodations along the way, assisted as well, to help me achieve things academically. I am now an associate professor with Azusa Pacific University. I am the site coordinator over special education programs at the High Desert Regional Center. My job is to work with teacher candidates who want to get their credential in special education, mild to moderate and moderate to severe. I advise them, I mentor them, but most importantly, I encourage them because some of them have special needs as well. And I'm excited about this opportunity to be here on today. And I thank Claremont and our facilitator, Sandra, thank you, for this opportunity. I started to teach because I wanted to pour something back into the community because I had a few people that helped me along the way. I thought about teaching math because the more complex situations are, the easier I understand them. The simple things have a tendency to go over my head. But I realized that one of the drafters that was working for me, who I was real close with, he took me one day to Latterman Hospital. And on that venture, when we walked in, these children who had, some of them no arms, some of them no legs, came up to Juan and they began to hug him and to love him. And because I was Juan's friend, they began to hug me and love me also. Well, the ride home was a very emotional one for me. I was touched, and I realized that these children needed love and they needed support. As I continue in my successful engineering career, I realized also that there were several minority students that were being placed into special education programs, and many of them were diagnosed as emotionally disturbed or incapable of learning and so on and so forth. And in reality, what I realized was that they just didn't have anyone to teach them the way they learn, or someone that knew that they had the ability to learn. And so I decided to change my career and to work with this group of students. Last Monday, I taught a class, and in the class, I had 25 students, and class lasts for 4.5 hours. One of the students told me afterward, he says, Professor Richardson, you need to teach, you need to go back to the classroom. I says, what do you mean? You need to go back to the classroom. I said, you mean K-12? He says, yes. I said, well, thank you, I appreciate that. He says, yeah, because they need you down there. I says, I'm there. He said, what do you mean? I says, when I was in the classroom, each year I touched 120 student lives. But I realized that if I went to higher ed and taught aspiring teachers, for instance, there's 25 students in this room, and all of you have 120 students, so I'm touching a much broader space. He goes, oh, okay, I get it. And so I'm excited about the job that I'm doing. I really enjoy it, and I'm an advocate for students that are in higher ed. My research interest has to do with empowering students who have dyslexia that are in higher ed and helping them navigate through the system successfully.
Hi. Hi, I'm Maddie Rubelo. I'm a senior at Scripps, American Studies major. And I'm the co-founder and president of the Disability Illness and Defense Alliance, which is the disabled students organization at the Claremont colleges. This summer, I was also in the American Association of People with Disabilities internship program. I interned in the Office of Congressman Alan Grayson. And that internship program brought 30 disabled students to DC, and we interned all around the city. And so I'm really interested in self-advocacy, and what's really made a difference for me in my life is not moving away from the label of disability, but claiming the label of disability, saying I am disabled, and that's not a bad thing. And so when I say I am a disabled person, that acknowledges that disability is part of my identity, and it also says that I face structural discrimination because of my disability. I face ableism. And so what I like to do here at school, and then what I'm hoping to do professionally, is sort of bring people, like help people advocate for themselves, help people understand that their disability isn't a bad thing, that the problem is when you face stigma, when you face structural discrimination, when you face physical barriers. And so I have a chronic illness. And so I've encountered a lot of professors who, because they can't see my disability, they think it doesn't exist, they think I'm lying, they think I'm exaggerating. And so that really has been my largest barrier at school. And so when we talk to professors and educate them and educate students on campus and help them become allies, then I think the experience of disabled students on campus really improves.
in sociology and I'm minoring in Spanish. And one of the things that really caught my attention about this conference was the name of it, which was Focus on Ability. And I just thought to myself, that's it. That's what people need to do, because so many times in my life, my identity and who I am as a person have been overshadowed by, oh, she's the blind girl. That's her disability. That's who she is. Like, I guess an example that stands out in recent memory was my mom somehow dragged me to one of her work parties, and this guy just, like, I was shaking people's hands and meeting people, and this guy says, "Oh, hello, it's nice to meet you. Is this problem a retinal one?" And I just stood there for a second, and I couldn't figure it out. Like, why would someone look at me and decide that the one thing they should notice is a problem and something that needed to be fixed? Because when I think about my life, I don't characterize it by problems or limitations or misfortunes. I feel fortunate that I'm able to attend one of the best colleges in the country, and that I can participate in a full load of classes using technology, and that I love to sing, so I'm a member of the choir, and I also I volunteer as a college advisor for a high school student, and I recently started volunteering at an animal shelter. So I have so many things that make my life enriching and fulfilling, and blindness does play a role in those things. It is a factor. It does change how I do things, but it doesn't inhibit anything. It doesn't stop me from doing anything that I want to do, that I enjoy doing. Except maybe driving. Self-driving cars are coming out soon. Yeah, and I'm just hoping that by getting out there and doing what I love and aspiring towards my career goals, which are either in mediation or social work, that just by refusing to sit still and hide and not let my disability define me, that other people will do the same, and that I can change some perceptions that way. And that's what I hope to do, is to play my own small part in helping others focus on ability rather than disability.
Well, thank you all of you for introducing yourselves. So here we go. We're going to go for a very strong word these days, and a strong word that all of you, I'm sure, have faced just like I do on a daily basis. But the word of stigma. Okay, stigma is something that we face, whether it's at school, whether it's at work, whether it's simply out being out in public. There's a stigma of having a disability and people's perception of who we are, when what our abilities are. So let me ask you, in working with faculty, going to the classroom on an everyday basis, what do you consider to be a very successful relationship that you've established with a faculty member, and how have your advocacy skills played a role in that, in creating that successful rapport with the faculty member? First one.
I actually work quite closely with a lot of faculty because I'm in higher education. And for me, again, self-disclosure is just the best way to do it. So in particular, I want to share a little example. We have a class here on this campus that is 8 hours long on a Saturday. That does not work well for my mental structure. It just doesn't. It's a long period of time. So going into the class, talked to the professor and shared with him, this is going to be challenging. I have some attention type issues. It's going to make it a little difficult. This is what's going to happen. And now you know. It's just, that's what it needs to be. So I feel like faculty relationships that are successful are communicative. You have to say something. The perceptions, I mean, you know, yeah, we have some challenges, and the perception that those challengers are more than who we are as people is just incorrect. But if you kind of leave it up front with faculty and just let them know, person to person, this is what we're working with, this is what we're doing, I think that that's where I've found the most success in dealing with faculty. And all faculty are not, they're not all, you know, in the place that they need to be personally to understand that. So you do get faculty members who just don't believe you or who will challenge you publicly. And there we have to develop our own understandings of our own rights and our own person. Like I wouldn't let any general person, you know, approach me with disrespect on any issue. So you have to like treat faculty like people. You know, faculty is a title. So you talk, this communication I think is the best, most successful experiences that I've had with faculty.
I would have to agree. Also, I would have to add that knowing that, you know, they can come to me and ask me any question they want, being open and not being afraid of my disability, and knowing how to, just being open and speaking about it and not shy about it, they are able to ask me questions like, well, you know, should you sit in the front of the room, or where do you want to sit, where do you want to take your exams, how long should it be? And I think having just an open understanding of my own disability helps them also understand it too, because sometimes when you go to a faculty member and you're not sitting in a wheelchair, that, you know, you can't see our disabilities, they, like you said, like they don't want to believe you the very first time. And then you say, well, you know, I do need extra time. It's not because I'm trying to one up on the other students or anything, it's because I need the first half hour to calm myself down and actually focus and, you know, block out everything that's going on around me, and then I can take the exam. And then once they see me take the exam and they see my grades, they're like, oh, okay, she does need this accommodation, but she still is able to do this class. So I think just being open and just hitting it head on and telling the faculty, you know, ask me questions, you know, I'm not afraid of my disability. I'm not, you know, shy of who I am or what my disabilities are. I think that's really helping the faculty get to know, you know, people with disabilities, but also the actual disability itself. And, you know, when somebody comes to you and says, oh, I have a disability, I need this, and I'm not in a wheelchair, like, believe them, you know? So I think that really helps, just being open with it.
As a student, I've learned it's most important to be your self-advocate. You have to let people know where you're having difficulty. I never personally, because of the stigma, acknowledged that I had a learning disability until I started working on my doctoral degree. I picked up 3 masters, but I just mentioned it to one person in the doctoral program one time. I don't know if anything happened with it or not, but I just mentioned it one time because I had to mention it. But I found out that when, in the past, I mentioned to my professors that I could use a little bit more time or this or that, they, as much as possible, were willing to accommodate me, which was greatly appreciated. I can't tell you the number of times that I've taken a written exam and the instructor talked with me about the exam afterwards, sometimes immediately after exam, in which case I articulated everything on the exam that was not reflected on my test. It's called dyslexia. But I could articulate things. Several times I tried to tell the instructors, look, give me an opportunity to orally give you the exam. Dyslexias are known for switching letters and numbers, words within sentences, sentences within paragraphs. How about paragraphs within chapters? Okay, I'm serious. I do not think in a linear fashion because of the dyslexia I have. I'm compensating dyslexia now that I've learned. But like I said, more complex, all this out here, I can decipher it down to you know, a channel where things are understandable. From the faculty standpoint, I make sure that I talk to students and let them know that I'm here to help you. If you don't have a problem, I can't help you. If you don't acknowledge to me that you have a problem, I can't help you, I should say. And so I always let them know that I'm here to assist you. Case in example, 4 weeks into the term, Tuesday, I called every single one of my students, and on the one-to-one said, look, how are you doing? Can I help you with anything? I'm here to help you. If you have some difficulty, let me know. And I want to let them know that they can freely talk with me, and whatever they share with me is totally confidential. But my job is to help them.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem I've encountered is that professors they don't necessarily have malicious intent, but there's a lot of ignorance, and I think that comes from the fact that they just don't receive training. At Scripps, at least, they send out letters with our accommodations, and then like that's all the professors get. And students are encouraged to talk to the professors, but I think my experience certainly would be a lot better if professors were given training in disability issues, because I think a lot of them, once I go and talk to them, they want to help, they want to honor the accommodations, and they have to, it's the law. But it's not fun in reminding your professors that, you know, when they are trying to deny you accommodations and you have to say, I actually can't do this. And I think trust really is very important. Professors, I've found that some professors are worried that students are going to abuse their accommodations, but I find that very rarely happens. And so when professors trust students, students feel more comfortable coming to the professors when there is an issue, and they come to them earlier, and communication is better. And that really is the key, I think, to having a good experience is communication. But if professors seem closed off, if they seem like they're not going to be willing to work with a student, then that makes it a lot more difficult. And I think on the student side, self-advocacy is really important, and I hope schools continue to push students to advocate for themselves, teach students about their rights, so that when a professor does try to deny them an accommodation, the student knows that they can either talk to the professor directly or go to the disability services office and say, I know this isn't right, I know there's a problem, let's talk about how we can fix this. Because I mean, it's difficult when your professor is the one who's giving you a grade to be confrontational with them, and that's never a comfortable position to be in. So the more that everybody knows, the fewer misunderstandings you'll run into.
So, I came into college with a pretty broad strategy for how to deal with my disability in terms of relating to my professors. I wanted to draw attention to it as little as possible. I wanted to go to class knowing that they had received the accommodation letter, they knew they were going to have a blind student. I didn't need to talk to them about it that much. And if I needed help with something, if I couldn't figure something out, well, I could probably figure it out somehow on my own. And I'm smart enough. I have the resources. I have the technology. I can figure this out. But one thing I noticed was that this actually made my professors focus more on my disability. This made them more nervous. Like, I think the third or fourth week of school, I had a Spanish test where there were pictures, and my professor just didn't know what to do about it. She just gave me the flash drive with the test and thought, oh, I guess she can figure this out somehow, because I hadn't really explained that I couldn't do that. I hadn't gone into enough detail and met with my professors and told them what I could do and what I would need accommodations for specifically. And I guess part of that was because I didn't quite understand myself. I feel like I was underprepared by the public education system and my high school to know that once I got into college, I would be on my own, and I would need to figure out exactly what I needed from my professors. And then I took a genetics class where there were diagrams, and I hadn't really arranged for how I would do that either. I just thought, oh, I can get my professor to describe them, or I can get someone to describe them. But that does take advanced planning. And so, from my first year of college, I learned so much that coming into my second year, I emailed all of my professors and have established really good relationships with them. And I feel like them not having that anxiety has allowed them to get to know me more as a person, because I've come in to talk with them. And I have a linguistics course that's a little bit challenging because linguistics involves special symbols and syntax trees and things that are a little bit more difficult if you can't draw that well. But I'm so glad that I have this line of constant communication with my linguistics professor. We email back and forth with ideas of how I can do things. Like, she suggests that I can use brackets to communicate about the trees, the syntax trees, and I say, oh, maybe there's a way I can type out symbols in a special font, and then that ends up working out. And so we work together on accommodations. I feel like it's been so much better for me this year because I established those relationships with professors, and I talk to them, and I don't refrain from communicating with them about my disability because I don't like being defined by it. That's something I said earlier. I don't like that, but it is a part of who I am. Being blind is an important part of who I am. It is part of my identity, and it's not something that I should ignore because that's just going to hinder my education, and it's something that's there, and I think that's really important.
Great, thank you. And earlier we talked a lot about quite a bit about identity. Maybe that's a good segue into my next question. The disability itself is part of what we may or may not consider our own identity. We talked earlier about having been diagnosed, having discovered, having realized, and then just being identified by the disability itself. And I can relate to what you were saying with that you refer to as the blind girl, whereas sometimes I refer to as the guy in the wheelchair. And so, people will then learn that I'm not just the guy in the wheelchair, I'm the novel. And I can still be the guy in the wheelchair because where am I gonna hide the wheelchair, right? But let me ask you, in being diagnosed or in discovering or in realizing or simply not wanting to be identified by the disability itself, how has this played a role in creating your identity? And has this identity strengthened over time, whether it is because you've learned how to better advocate for yourself, or whether it's because simply society is changing to the point where maybe now both of you are meeting halfway, or you're meeting with the faculty or wherever it is, and you're getting a better understanding. What's been the difference?
I think definitely, I was diagnosed at 19, so this is a typical early adulthood, is a typical onset age for bipolar disorder. So I've had 25 years, I just repeated myself. I've had 25 years to figure it out. So, I applaud some of the younger members of the panel who are really still trying to navigate this. I find that self-advocacy has strengthened my own identity, but I also find that advocating for myself has put me in a position to advocate for others. I'm a fairly strong personality, as some of my colleagues here who know me, they know about me. And there are times when, people will come up to me and say, hey, I heard this, or I know this. I'm very vocal about the fact that I have this mental health disability. And they go, wow, I would have never guessed. Well, I don't walk around asking people any personal details about themselves, so why would you try to guess something like that about me? So I find that because I'm so vocal, I get the little whisperers coming behind me going, hey, I didn't know that, but thank you for sharing. And I feel it and I see it, like the strength that they get, because I'm saying, this is my challenge. And because I have no problem bragging about my credentials to whatever extent they are, they're like, what if you did this with that challenge? And being able to see that, it's like a constant strength. Because as much as I might get knocked down by people who think, well, bipolar disorder has this tendency to be very animated sometimes. Some of us are very, very animated, and people perceive it like you're on drugs or something. So, because you have to kind of combat that stuff constantly, it can knock you down inside. I have to prove to people that I'm not on speed by telling them explaining to them something very personal that I would rather not share, frankly, but over the years, I've found that when I do go on and share it, then people don't quite look at me strange when I'm having issues, not quite so much, and other students are very supportive. And then I see people who aren't as vocal, kind of leaning on my ability to be vocal, and then I feel proud. I feel proud that I am able to connect with each child. Self-advocacy takes on more of a role because now I'm not just advocating for me, I'm advocating for everybody up here who may have dealt with a professor who was insensitive when I'm able to stand in front of a room of faculty and say, look, talk to me. Let's do some things. I was able to present at a student research conference here about disability accommodation. So it has filled me with pride, being able to be a part of a conversation that's usually very negative and bringing some positive attributes to life about just who we are and the special skills that come along with it.
I think at the very beginning, when I was kind of embarrassed of having this disability, I wouldn't, you would see me, okay, test time came, I would go off, into the other room where it was quiet, I would have a reader, or I wouldn't take the test in the classroom, I would be at the Office of Disability Center taking the test, and my peers would be like, well, you didn't show up for the exam. What's wrong with you? You studied for like 3 weeks, where were you? And then I would have to say, well, no, I take my exams at the Disability Center, and then they would see me completely differently. But then when we all got our grades back and I was doing just as good as them, they would say, well, how are you doing this? And I'm like, that little study session that we had, I studied twice as hard because I don't understand it the first time, or I get paragraphs wrong, or I'm answering a question that I'm answering something that they're not even asking me. So I have to be able to, I stopped being shy about it. I had to say, you know what, I have a disability, and sometimes I do fail the test because I'm answering questions that are completely not even what they wanted, and I have to go to the professor and say, okay, I didn't understand this question. I obviously mixed it up in my head, or I don't know what I did. And I had to actually stand up for myself, and I had to advocate for myself, and I had to tell the other students, like, it's okay for me to take the exam somewhere else, or, in another room, or, I just have a harder time doing this, but I'm not dumb. I'm okay. I can do it. So I think being shy really hurt me. So now I'm open about it. And now that I'm an upperclassman and I'm doing research as an undergrad, and people are seeing me, in the campus newsletter that, I describe a new species of flying gecko, and they see me, I've become a different person. I'm like, oh, I'm that crazy jungle girl, and now I'm like, oh, and I have a disability, and I can do it. And so I feel like, in a way, the other students kind of look up and say, wow, like, she's doing all this stuff, and she has disabilities, that's really good. So I have a lot of people come to me and talk with me about it. And I don't ever, I don't silence it anymore. I come out and I say it right away, and I really, I own it, and I think a lot of people benefit from that, not only from myself, but I think I see other people, kind of like, oh, well, I could do that too. So I think that's how I really get over the whole stigma of, oh, she has a disability, So it's like second to who I really am.
For me, before I was able to put a title on the condition that I had, and not being aware of the medical model of dyslexia where there's a problem that necessitates a cure, I lean more towards focusing on my strengths. And I begin to develop those strengths which come under the social model. Consequently, one of my strengths I found out was endurance. So if I have something I had to read, I would have to read it 4 or 5 times. But I had the physical stamina to be able to endure to read it 4 or 5 times. Okay, so that began to help me. One of the things that my colleagues began to realize with me, and other individuals in different groups that I had been in over the years, was that whenever there was a problem, the more complex it was, I was always able to articulate what the gist of the problem was and the solution. That's easy for me. In addition, I was able to, the more complex things were, to make them simple so that other people could understand it. That's part of my makeup. So I embrace my condition to the point that I don't look at it as being a disability. As West indicates, it's an advantage. And so I begin to use this advantage to my advantage and to the advantage of others. Even so much so till the term dyslexia, I'm working on changing from dyslexia to differentia. Okay? And because it doesn't mean that I'm incapable, it just means I do things different.
So I have a chronic illness called dysautonomia, and I got sick when I was 14. And so being 14 isn't necessarily a lot of fun generally. And then you throw in, all of a sudden you can't get out of bed and you're in a lot of pain. You don't know what's wrong, and it's pretty confusing. And it took me about a year to get a diagnosis, during which time I went to so many doctors, and I had so many tests, and nobody could figure out what was going on, until finally, piece by piece, they sort of put it together. And then I didn't really go to high school after that. So that was the beginning of my sophomore year. I had teachers come to my house, and I pretty much graduated by the skin of my teeth. And throughout high school, I didn't think of myself as disabled. I didn't think of myself as sort of anything in terms of that type of identity. I just thought about it like on a personal level, like I am sick. And then I got to college, and we started talking about sort of like oppression and structural discrimination in terms of things like gender and race and class and sexual orientation in some of my classes. And I thought, well, disability should be part of this. Like, it seemed like something was missing there. And it was through that process that I came to realize, well, wait, I am disabled. Like, and because I realized that, I realized all of the sort of shame that I had internalized, all of the, you know, when I went to doctors and they looked at me and they thought I was just lazy, and like I had sort of, even though I knew they were wrong, like they were doctors, and so, you know, you take that in, you internalize that. And so sort of recognizing that I was disabled and that the problem wasn't me, the problem wasn't my body, the problem was everybody else who had said that that I was lying or that like I was incapable, like that was the issue at hand. That really changed, and that was a really big transformation. And so that's how I came to identify as disabled, and how I came to claim that identity. And when I think about it, and you mentioned the medical model and the social model, and starting to move away from the medical model of like, my body is the problem, the solution is to fix it, and moving towards the social model of like, yes, there is impairment, but the problem is how society views that impairment and how society treats that impairment and how society does not always accommodate that. That for me was really empowering, and sort of began my journey to like advocate for myself, and then also to encourage others to advocate for themselves. So in what I've been doing on campus, people have been coming up to me and saying like they didn't realize that they were considered disabled because they didn't realize that something like depression counted as a disability. And so when people sort of have something that they can latch onto, when they realize that they are not the problem, that their bodies are not the problem, that their lives don't have any less value, that becomes really empowering, and I think it's really important.
So you would think that as a blind person, I don't have a disability that I could hide in any way. But, and I knew that, I have known that. But in some ways, throughout my life, I have still tried to hide my disability just by not bringing it up, not talking about it, and hoping that if I look like I have it all together and I don't need any help, that people will just forget that I can't see, and that will help me make friends and just like everyone who can see. And that was my attitude all throughout high school, and even coming into college. And what really has changed my attitude is coming to college and meeting people who I feel will actually accept every part of my identity and every part of who I am. And a lot of what I learned from my experiences in classes is that I do need to speak up and mention the things that I might need help with and things that I might have concerns about. And that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. That doesn't mean that I have any less value as a person, or that people aren't going to want to talk to me or deal with me. And I think that's a really negative perception that has been perpetuated, that people with challenges or disabilities, or whatever you want to call it, they should just try to deal with that and just deal with it themselves. And I think it has been really great for me to start bringing up my blindness in more conversations, and even joking about it, even just being open about it with my friends has made them want to talk to me about it, and has caused them to talk to me about issues that they might be having, and being able to share what's going on in their lives. And I think that's really helpful.
I want to have I'll give the audience an opportunity to ask some questions also. But it's interesting, I keep, piggybacking on some of the comments that Kara was saying, but I remember when I was in high school, it was funny. I was just growing up with a disability. People are afraid to ask you, well, why are you in a wheelchair? Or, what's that on your hand? And things like that. But for the longest time, would you believe they thought that I was in a gang fight and that I was stabbed in the back of the neck and I had a scar on the back of my neck. And I used to get this very, a thug around there. So it was funny just when, you realize that all the myths that are going around about you and how you became, you acquired disability. Same thing, like I'm sure all of you have experienced all the myths that I said about the disabilities that all of you have talked about today. But I'd like to give the audience an opportunity to ask questions, because I think one of the key things about this type of conference is we want to get away from all the myths that are out there. And how are we going to get away from all those myths? Is by asking questions. Like, don't be shy, don't be afraid about asking questions. I'm not saying this is everything you want to know about, but we're afraid to ask. No, but if you do have a question, our audience, our panelists here are very open to answering that. So I'd like to give it for the audience right now, and then we can go ahead and conclude after that.
I have a comment. When I met Kira, I just was so impressed. Growing up in the Black Baptist Church, there was Kira singing in the gospel choir for CUC. And she was up there jamming with the rest. I said, my goodness, maybe she's been visiting some of these churches too. Just phenomenal. And that speaks to her adapting to campus life and enjoying it and experiencing it fully, rather than holding back and saying, well, that's not something I'm comfortable doing. And that's what we're really aiming for. So she lives her voice in song, and she's lived her voice today to help us understand what it is to be blind and to be a student, and some of the experiences that she's gone through. And I do value that input.
Yes, we have a question. Right.
Yeah, thank you all for being here today. By the way, I really enjoyed everything you guys had to say. In the earlier panel, somebody had mentioned how services on campus are not just supposed to be assigned to office and disability services, but it's a campus effort to enhance our services for them. And I know this panel talked a little bit about how you work with staff to be proactive, and I wonder, do you have any recommendations for what staff should do in general? I think a lot of staff don't know what they should be doing or how they can empower themselves to learn more. And so, if you have any suggestions, let us know.
One thing, obviously, I've worked with a lot of morning and I put on my clothes and I go to school like everyone else. And that's what I want from staff, from faculty, from the general public. When you're talking to me, whatever the issue is, whatever the challenge, if it's my behavior, if it's my demeanor, whatever it is, talk to me. Talk to me like I'm a human being, and don't let your perceptions or bias get in the way, because that is one of those well-meaning, well-intentioned, I don't want to ask kind of things that happens that really helps ramp up the discrimination around it. It's like, it's not a shameful thing. I was born, it happened, this is who I am, and everybody has their challenges in one way or another. Just talk to them. I would just say, when you see something going on, I would so much prefer that people not think, oh wow, she's one of those girls, she must be on speed or something. Hey, are you doing okay? You're a little animated today, it's not normal for you. Just talk to me, and then I can decide how much I want to share. Don't leave it in your head, because that really helps create this culture of shame.
One of the things that I have found is that it's, as we mentioned earlier, is that faculty and staff are not properly informed that we need to provide on a continuous basis more insight for them on the legality associated with providing accommodations to students. Case example, accommodation is different than a modification. Accommodations do not change the integrity of the content. Accommodation on a test that's written on an 8.5 by 11 could be the same test written on a poster board, or it could be the test that's audible, where the student can hear the questions compared to reading it. So those accommodations doesn't change the test. Modifications change things. Accommodations for special needs students, we don't want the integrity change. We want to have equal opportunity to assess or access to the information, but we have to do it in a way that we need to get it, and sometimes even in the demonstration aspect. Also, I like to add that when it comes to special needs students, one of the things that we have to consider is that the accommodations don't just benefit special needs students. How many times have you walked up to a door and it opened up for you automatically, so that all the things in your hand makes it a lot easier for you to walk through? Getting on an elevator compared to walking up 13 steps. I mean, those are accommodations that help people that are not disabled.
I think also, every time beginning of first day of class, you hand the syllabus out and there's a little blurb about students with disabilities will accommodate you. I think underplaying it is kind of, as the student sitting there looking at you in like a room full of students, and you're kind of underplaying it like, oh, if you have a disability, come to me, we'll talk about it. Like, I think that really puts up a wall for the student, because you're not that we want you to, baby us or anything. I think that we just want to have a little bit more respect too, because when you're reading the syllabus and you're saying, okay, well, anybody who has disabilities, just whatever, come talk to me. If you're like kind of just brushing it off, throwing off, it just, to me, it feels like you don't want to accommodate me, that you're kind of like, yeah, whatever, come and see me whenever you need to. I think, I don't really have a solution to that, but if you could, I have a lot of professors that do that, and at the end, I go up to them, I say, I have a disability, and I need to talk to you about that, and when you read through it, kind of like it was just another piece of legalities that you had to get through, it kind of makes me not want to come and talk to you, and I'm upfront and I tell them that, and if they don't like me the rest of the year, then so be it. But hopefully maybe I made an impact on that professor, so the next time that they go and read the syllabus, that they treat it a little bit more respectfully and don't make it.
Give you a sense of validation.
Yes. And so for the other students that don't have disabilities, they kind of brush it off too, like, oh, those students, over there. So yeah, it's kind of doing that. So I think that's one thing I would.
And I don't know, without putting words in your mouth, but I think also validation is not just validating disability itself, but validate you as an individual.
Yeah.
Period.
I think a lot of professors do tend to operate under the assumption that there aren't disabled students in their classes. But 1 in 5 Americans has a disability, so there are probably disabled students in every class. And I do think when a professor is, like you were saying, treats it the same way they would when they talk about grading or when they talk about the final paper or whatever, that gives it more legitimacy. One of the things we've been doing at the Claremont colleges is we've been having faculty panels where we have sort of something like this, except for the audience is faculty, and students are up here, and we talk about, so the disability services coordinator talks about the accommodations process, and then the students talk about their experiences, and the professors have an opportunity to ask questions. And we have it as a very open space where professors hopefully feel more comfortable. And that, I think, professors have responded really positively to that, because it's not, I think I said before, it's not necessarily like there's malicious intent, they just really don't know. And so they make assumptions that oftentimes hurt students, but if you have things like panels, or if you have workshops, or things that are structured to give professors more information, it makes the experience better for everybody.
Any other question? Yes, in the back, Tammy.
Yes, I don't have a question as much as I do a comment. Speaking about, Sandra was referring to earlier about, I can't remember the name on the end.
Sure.
In the quiet, yes, thank you. Being a student with a disability sort of gives you an extra edge of stick-to-itness, I can do it-ness, I can make it-ness. If you can get used to being the other in this capacity, you can get used to being the other in a lot of other ways that other people don't have that type of ability, viability in other capacities. I'm thinking of Maria, and she mentioned this, how she is a biologist, and she is a biologist extraordinaire like no one I know. And we've had conversations about it, tell me when to stop. But she's been pretty vocal about being a female in a male-dominated industry. She is the type to go to Malaysia and look at geckos and get in the swamps and look at all the, you know what you look at, Maria, whatever, you know. And so she's learned to be
She's
learned to be the other, you know, in a field that is dominated by men typically, historically. And so here again, as a person with a disability, many times they are the person that they're not regarded as like other persons in the classroom or whatever. So I just want to applaud all of you for having this what's the word I'm looking for, resilience, to be down and keep bouncing back up, down and bouncing back up. And I'm sure that singing in a black gospel choir and giving it your all and going to a marine biology field in Malaysia and all of this, and learning how to cope and develop strategies in so many other areas of their lives. And those of us who don't have some similar disabling conditions, we may not have that same kind of resilience. So I applaud you all in that regard for being able to be the other and still live through it.
I too applaud you. You are incredible. As I said today, this was to be an exchange of learning. And I don't think anyone in our audience today has missed the opportunity to pick up some really great tips about how to relate to students with challenges, but also how to look at them as people first. And then they need accommodations in some cases. You know, I'm lost without my glasses. I have to have glasses to find my glasses because I throw them on the bed and then I'm lost. So I keep a stash of extra glasses right next to my bed. So when I get up in the morning, I can find them. I want to thank this panel. You guys have been just incredible. And Gonzalo, my friend and my mentor at Cal State LA, I just appreciate and value so much. Do you have some final comments?
Actually, yes, I do. Thank you. I want to thank you, Sandra, for inviting me to do this. And I know that it was very difficult in itself to getting a hold of me and getting to come down and be here today. But I really enjoy doing these kind of events because I'm also very vocal. I'm also much of an advocate for people with disabilities. And I really enjoy working with all of you. And like Tammy said, your resilience here has demonstrated here to this audience is incredible. And your identities and who you are and what you have empowered to be at this time, no one can ever take that away from you. And keep going out there, keep fighting, keep advocating, and keep inspiring other students. Because you're right. Maybe there's another student who has bipolar who, until they heard you talk openly about it and very comfortably about it, maybe they were afraid to go out and feel comfortable with themselves. And that holds them back. Same thing with students with learning disabilities, with students who have other type of chronic illnesses. And you're already, all of you are leaders in itself, you know, and so I applaud all you guys, and you guys are great, and thank you for letting me asking you all these probing questions. Hopefully I wasn't too those, but anyway, thank you. And if you guys have any closing comments, that'd be great.
I do want to let everyone know that we have, lunch has arrived, and we're going to take a break and get our box lunches, bring them back in, because we have an incredible luncheon speaker. Dr. Duke is with us, and you're not going to want to miss hearing him. I want also you to know that those of you that see the merit in the panel discussions, we ask permission from all of our panelists to videotape them, and we're going to edit it down, and it's going to be on our disability website here at CGU, so that even those that weren't able to be here today will be able to hear the kinds of exchanges that have happened between our two panels, and of course our speakers. So thank you very much. We're going to be transitioning now into lunch. Okay, and I'm sure a lot of you are ready. Thank you. I do want to also mention someone that was a group that was left off of our program, and that is our Graduate Student Council. They have been so supportive, and they provided some gifts for all our panelists. They're going to get gifts, and all of our speakers today are getting gifts. So I want to thank you for that and acknowledge their support.
Yes, you get presents.
Yes, it's necessary.